You're listening to Beyond the Claim, the show for forward-thinking risk and claims professionals curious about the latest industry trends, winning strategies, and stories from influential leaders. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Beyond the Claim. I'm your host, Mark Cunningham, Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for Broadspire, a Crawford company. Today I have with me, thank you for joining us, Rachel Perry. Rachel is Chief Innovation Officer with Aon North America. Rachel, welcome.
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. Rachel and I met in person earlier this year as we kind of coming out of the pandemic, and I appreciate you taking your time to meet with us over the podcast today. So Rachel, the Chief Innovation Officer, congratulations. I hear that's a newer position. I will ask you though, what is a Chief Innovation Officer? I think that's one of the newer C-suite positions that we've heard of. So what is that role exactly?
No, it's a great question, Mark. And, one of the things, that's really exciting, as you probably, I know that you see from the Crawford side and from the Broadspire side, is that risks are evolving rapidly. And I think as an industry, we're faced with this challenge of sort of like, how are we going to address these risks for our clients? And the reality is that there's more, there's sort of like things that we need to do to sort of close what we call relevance gap, being able to really figure out how do we bring solutions to clients that don't exist today. It's not those traditional solutions. And so back in November, Aon announced a role called the Global Innovation Officer. That's a direct reporting role to Greg Case, and announced that Jillian Seifeld would be our Global Innovation Officer for Aon, with the whole sort of focus around sort of what we call net new sort of innovations to be able to solve real problems and unmet needs for clients. And so commercial risk being one of the largest businesses within Aon in North America as a geography, being one of the largest geographies within Aon, really being able to have individuals be able to sort of laser and focus on that within the solution and the geography to really make sure that we're sort of getting those innovations out as quickly as possible, that we're understanding what those needs are. And sometimes those needs are global, sometimes those needs are much more within a geography, sometimes, and so really laser focused on commercial risk. And so this is a brand new role, and I'm super excited about it. And as my background was many years in commercial risk before I was the Atlanta market leader. And so it's just sort of, for me, a little bit of coming back home, being 100% focused on commercial risk, but in a way that's very different than I've ever experienced it, which is really around sort of what are we doing new to be able to solve real client problems. And in the 60 days so far that I've been in this role, it's been really exciting. There's a lot of exciting things already happening, but I'm excited about what we're doing and what we're going to do for clients. So without getting on my, too excited about my soapbox here, it's in 60 days. It's a real role with real, I think, impact what we need to do for clients. So I'm excited about it.
I've got a lot of questions. As a person that really thrives on kind of being placed in an entrepreneurial type of environment and really tapping into the creative gene, we got a lot of questions because I think there's a lot there, and I totally agree with you that the way that we are specialized in segmenting markets require more innovation to align with specific market segments, globally, locally and globally. Before we go there, though, that's an achievement for a lifetime achievement for many, and I'm sure you still have a lot of runway to go. But there is a lot also before you got here. That's impactful. I know it's meaningful to many in many different ways. How did you get to the point of Aon Chief Innovation Officer? And you talked about some of your background in different segments of the space, but how does one achieve that? How did you achieve that? Everyone's journey is slightly different, but how did you achieve that? Was that your goal coming out of college? That I will be this Chief Innovation Officer one day, or did you follow a different path?
Definitely didn't think about it in college. I don't think any of us, I think to your point, I think this idea of chief innovation officer or innovation roles within various industries is relatively a new concept to some degree. But, what I did think about in college, was I needed to be successful. failure was not an option. First, I share my story with being first generation college graduate with a total of six siblings, four of them older than me, so I was the fifth. And one young, and the four older siblings were not college graduates when I graduated from college, and my mom and dad had never graduated from college, and quite frankly, my mom hadn't graduated from high school until she got her GED in her 50s, which I'm incredibly proud of. She's almost 80 now. And so for me being the fifth and the first one to really achieve that was a big deal for my family. And so so really the goal for me, you're talking about was it chief innovation officer? The goal for me was to be successful, to graduate from college and to be in an industry and a career that would achieve a level of success, not just for me personally, but for my family and the trajectory of my family. And I've shared on many sort of interviews and podcasts because I'm incredibly proud, that all of my siblings now are college graduates, even the older four, and in fact, master's degrees and everything. And so, it's something to be said. And I always make this point in these types of conversations. That it starts with, maybe sometimes it starts with, just being the first. I've had this conversation throughout my career about either being the first or the only in a lot of different settings. But it does impact your family and sort of like where you want to go. And so I have an incredibly successful, educated family of siblings and motivate my mom to go get her GED. And I'm just incredibly proud of them all. And so then my own two girls, daughters, one's a senior in college today, getting a nursing degree, which I'm incredibly proud about, and the other's an 11th grader. They don't know anything differently because that's all they've ever seen. And I think that's super exciting, well beyond just me. And so I'm sorry, I got on that sort of
No,
bandwagon,
no,
but
I love it. I selfishly, well, one, it reminds me of like almost like a butterfly effect within your family, right? That you flap the wings and it's spreading across the family to improving everyone individually. Selfishly, I align with the story to some degree, where in my case, immigrant parents, no college experience by anyone, first graduating college, kind of setting the example for, and it doesn't have to be college, but just the failure not an option mindset, whatever direction you go in. So I hear it, I align with it, love it. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, even though I know you've shared it many times in the past. So how do you go from graduating college? Obviously, chief innovation officer is new, but did you know you wanted to go in the risk casualty space? How did that
you're
come
right.
to be?
Yeah, so University of Georgia graduate, which, University of Georgia, has the number one risk management program in the country today. Back then, I think it was number one, two, or number two, or whatever. It was a top risk management program. And so if you saw that going backwards, I was always intrigued with business. I was like, I want to be in the business school. Didn't know like what that meant, what major, just like I want to be a business person, when you're that young and no really one to look at to sort of mirror yourself. You're just like, I just want to be in business. And then, and this is the pattern, there's the department head of the risk management insurance program at University of Georgia, Dr. Gustafson. She sort of took me into this sort of, they call it minority honors intern program that was focused on putting more diverse colleagues, more, within the insurance industry. So she introduced me to that program, introduced me to the risk management major. I was able to intern in New York City with Marsh, when I was in college. And the rest was history. It was like the introduction for me to the insurance industry. And then she said to me, Dr. Gustafson, and at that time it was like UGA was like 100% job placement rate. So if you think about it very simplistically, it was not deep thinking. It was I'm gonna have to graduate from college. I got a 100% chance of having a job in business in this major. It's a done deal. And so, so that's how I chose to be in risk management. But it was a great decision because I love this industry. I got into it, and this industry, just the idea of casualty and the thought of like sort of dealing with those third party issues, liability issues, claims, um, just was interesting to me, and so I gravitated to casualty, and moved to New York City at the age of 21. I tell people with two suitcases and a little TV, moved into a women's residence because I didn't know anyone in New York City, but I had a job, and that's all that mattered for me at that point in my life. Um, and started my insurance career. I spent the first 10 years of my career up north working in New York, and New Jersey with New York and New Jersey brokers, really learning our industry, and really, you know, pushing people to teach me the industry. Um, one of the guys at Marsh back in the day, his name is Bob Mazzaro. The deal with him was he was a really good casualty broker. And I said, but he didn't know really computer stuff. And back in the early 90s, it was like they were really good technically, but they didn't know. I was like, I'm going to be the best, like Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to do all that stuff for you. But in return, I want you to teach me everything you know about casualty insurance. And that's really the beginning of how I became this casualty technician, of really understanding our product and how we, and what it means. And the rest of it was history, 20 years of being a casualty technician, leading casualty at Marsh and Aon. I came to Aon to lead the region for casualty. But what was different about Aon is, Aon really challenged me to get outside that box if I really wanted to grow my career and do some other things. And that's when I transitioned from casualty into really sort of this office leadership role, first account executive leadership and then office leadership. And it was because I took some risk, moving to New York, took some risk, moving out of casualty, took some risk going into office leadership, had never had that experience, is really what led me to this role because it was like just an accumulation of just being willing to do something that was put in front of me, and going back to that mindset of failure is not an option. I take that in every role that I ever do.
Absolutely. So then, if I assume technician, at your core, that's kind of I would imagine use that as the basis of how you establish yourself in a given setting. You move into this chief innovation officer role. How do you see the technician part of you apply? How do you apply that to that type of position, or is it no longer as applicable? Are you moving into, is it more strategic and less tactical? How do you see that playing?
Yeah, so my experience, profile of both being a technician for so long and then spending the last 5 years in office leadership, really understanding P&L management strategy, operations, sales, creates actually a wonderful blend for this role because the technical side of me at, triggers the technical questions and the challenging to some of our solution experts or in the different pockets because I think technically because I was in the technical world for 20 years. So I will ask about how the coverage works. And what does that mean for clients and what's the triggers, and so I think that is hugely valuable for me in this role. And I love our product and solutions because so I have a natural intrigue with understanding the different solutions that we bring. So that's helpful. But I will also say just the last 5 years of really being in what I call market leadership role, having to look at the business in a whole way, it makes me understand sort of how are we going to bring this to market. Are we going to be able to? Is it something that clients want? Can we scale it? So it gives you that sort of mindset. So those two together um, have been very, very valuable to me coming into this role. So yeah, I would say both, but the technician in me will always be. I'm glad, and I always say as a black female in our industry, I needed to be confident, just individually, I needed to walk in my skin as a black female in the insurance industry with confidence, leaning into something. So for me, that was leaning into a product. I tell others, lean into something. It's a product, maybe it's a segment, maybe it's an industry. But for me, I needed to lean into something to say, you can't tell me I don't know casualty. You can't tell me that I don't know that product. And so regardless of whatever, room or meeting I'm in, I walk with a level of confidence in what I know. And so no one can look at me and say, "Oh gosh, she doesn't know anything. Why is she in the room?" So it's just my own thing. Like I really always wanted to have something to lean into, just to be confident in our industry because I didn't see a lot of folks in our industry, right? That necessarily, look like me in a lot of the rooms I was in.
Yeah, no, I know you've mentioned, being the only one in the room throughout your career. Oftentimes, I want to hear more about that. I know DEI is a focus of yours as well as it is mine. I am curious though on before we go there on the Chief Innovation Officer role. Do you approach it as it's almost like a new business, or do you look at it as here's I mean, obviously you have your own, agenda, 90-day plan, whatever that might be as you kind of work into this, but are you having to create these concepts? Obviously you're doing interviews and such with the different markets, but are you having to create these ground up, or is this more of an existing business source that you can tap into? And how do you approach that? I mean, I think a lot of times folks don't take the leap, the risk, the challenge because of the fear of the unknown. You seem to have willingly accepted that throughout your career, based on your foundation and your strength of knowing the space. But do you get nervous at all any times? How do you step into this? What's your plan of attack?
Yeah, so the latter part of that question. So let me answer that part first. Yes, do I get nervous at times? I think um, I always want to, in any role that I'm in, to make sure that I'm driving impact and, impact to our industry, impact to clients, impact to colleagues. Um, feeling like and so I do I do believe very strongly that this role drive will is driving impact and will drive more impact as I continue to go on this journey. Um, in terms of is it a business and so the cool part today when I got into this role, like innovation, there were a lot of things already happening in the firm related to innovation. I think I did mention to you we have our global innovation officer that was appointed. So we sort of look at innovation in three buckets at Aon. We look at it as what we call net new, meaning there really was no product and solution out there in this space at all, and so we got to really try to figure out how to solve for it. Those are things like climate, digital assets, new mobility, things like that. We have another, area that we call it integrated or core plus, which is really around we have, two different solution groups within Aon that if they work together can do something really exciting and powerful and to bring a solution to the client. And so we may have, and this a good example of this is we have our human capital solution team working with our financial services group to come together and do some things in the space of ESG, which is really cool. And then we have this other group, which is core. I'm getting to the business question here. I'm trying core, which just means that we have all these different, you know, practices and groups within commercial risk and around the firm, but they're needing to constantly innovate within themselves to continue to be relevant. So casualty is a good example. We rolled out a couple of cool casualty facilities. Um, one being this lift facility I won't go into it earlier this year, um, where they're kind of innovating within themselves, bringing new capital solutions to clients within casualty. So the business of it, as I think about, is really around those three buckets and going, okay, what are we doing in those three buckets to scale, to meet client need, to scale, to make sure that we're, sort of driving growth. We're solving client problems, but we're also growing, right, as a firm. So there's a growth proposition in all three of those buckets. Um, and right now, what I will say to you is we're really sort of understanding. I'm really at this early stages of 60 days in a row, understanding where we are in those buckets to be able to understand sort of where the growth priorities need to be. right? And then accelerate. Press the gas.
Yes, yes, and this is a national position as well. You mentioned.
Yeah, yes. So
You're
it's the yes, a North America
North
position.
America, and okay, so I'd imagine that's well, obviously a large territory to cover. So there's a lot of due diligence up front that I would imagine you're spending the first X period of time on before you start pressing on the gas, or are you already doing that?
So the first 60 days on, well, so the first, I don't say six, first I just had to see what was out there because I think it's really important in any new role before you need to take time to understand what's already there. And then from there, and then who's already touching a lot of things.
Yeah,
So I spent the last, so we have this, sort of inventory, I call it innovation inventory internally that I've captured that. What's out there? What stages are those innovations in? Because we've created some frameworks. What's already launched, but we need to scale it. What's sort of in progress, and how can I help get it out to the market quicker? And then
yeah.
what's more in like a discovery phase, which we're still kind of ideation and we're trying to understand if we want to go forward or not. So that was first. And then a lot of it too is talking to folks like Crawford. I actually had and Crawford and company, just understand like what's out in the market, but how can we partner together as partners, to be able to work together on innovations, not just within Aon, but with our market, with our partners as well to get innovations out. So that's why, talking to you, Mark, and just having these types of conversations is also helpful.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I know we touched on it a bit in San Francisco, but I do think there's a way that as you all innovate and bring packages to your clients that groups like Crawford and others can realign how we present ourselves to the market to provide a united front, to provide something that's going to be meaningful to clients. So that's great. You touched on earlier the DEI component, and I love the way you position being the only one in the room at times. I guess I'll pivot on that, maybe compared to maybe some of your previous conversations. Are you still often the only one in the room? And if so, why? And have you seen a change over time, for better or for worse?
Yes, this is obviously this is a big topic, not just within our industry, but across the board. And so the short answer is, unfortunately, I still feel like I'm oftentimes still the only person in the room. Um, and one of my sort of, passions in our industry is to make sure that I, really help drive our industry more and more in this area. Um, because what happens a lot of time is we do a good job as an industry, maybe, or we're doing a better job as an industry, maybe recruiting, but we're still struggling with retaining, and we're definitely struggling with promoting, developing and promoting. And so you see where there's, even at Aon, we are, seeing a lot more diversity in our sort of, graduate, um, bringing folks in from college. We're being much more intentional and strategic around, how we're going to recruit talent, including diverse talent. But I think as an industry, we still have a lot more work to do around, how do we retain, how do we develop, how do we promote, and really see more leaders in our industry that are more diverse. I think we're making progress, but I think that we are still needing to continue to do more work in that area. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I've made this comment on some other interviews in the past that I don't oftentimes think that it's malicious. I think there's
hmm
a large segment of you hire who you know. And
hmm
I think we have a very, kind of a legacy industry where individuals, there's a lot of families involved, there's a lot of individuals from certain regions and so forth. And I think it's just a matter of recruiting from the same place, not just a matter, excuse me, one element of it is recruiting from the same places, hiring who from a lineage of family and friends and so forth. Yes, as always, there's going to be some overtones or undertones of kind of individuals that are malicious. But I think in general, to your point of being intentional about recruiting and being intentional about retention, because it's not just a matter of making folks comfortable in their space. Is your benefit package aligning with individuals within, whether it be based on gender or race or whatever it might be? Are you really getting creative to meet individuals where they are, or are we approaching these things the same way that we always have? It sounds like Aon has taken an intentional approach to DEI. Would you say that's the case from your experience over the years?
No, absolutely. I mean, so I just recently joined our Global Inclusion Leadership Council in the last, God, 30, 45 days, which came out of the George, I say, that was one of the things that came after the George Floyd situation tragedy, um, is that we needed to really be even to accelerate the way we want to accelerate. We must be much more intentional and bold
Yes.
about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And so I do believe Aon through different areas call it what we call our Global Inclusion Leadership Council, call it, our BRGs. I'm on our National Black Professional Network leadership team at Aon as well. Our just our what we call our regional inclusion committees, trying to put a lot more effort into this space. But you're right. It's been a history. I don't think it's sort of like some sort of. I agree with your assessment. I think it has been sort of a friends and family mindset for
Yes,
a
I
long time.
agree.
I
Yeah.
I laugh because my youngest daughter is a 11th grader in high school, and she's probably going to go down the business path too. And I'm like, you should think about this insurance career because your mommy's probably has connections, and I can probably help you. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to use my friends and family card. So
Yep.
and I totally get that, but we have to be more intentional beyond friends and family, to be able to have our industry reflect our clients and reflect who our clients want us to be. Because I see it on the broker side. I'm curious to how you see it, Mark, that when we go into a new business competition with some of our broker peers or whatever, and we show up as a prepared, technically strong, diverse team, we tend to
Mhm.
be much more successful in those situations than we do when we're not. And I think that, and we hear from, and sometimes we've talked to clients about why they chose us versus the other, and they will say, well, the others brought no diversity to the table, no women, no people of color, no nothing. And so I do believe our clients want us to go to market in a way that they themselves go to market as a diverse team. And we have more work to
Completely,
do to get that done.
completely agree with you. I also would say I would be unapologetic about the family and friends because that is the way it's been done, and it's okay to build on relationships. But absolutely, we have I've heard directly from clients, that business that we've been awarded, that have said explicitly, we aligned with you, Crawford, you Broadspire, because you not only brought in a diverse group and it clearly is infused within who you are, but it was authentic. It wasn't just that you picked some folks to come in because you knew DEI was important to us. These are individuals within the business. These are leaders within the business, and this is a representation, a micro representation of your broader business, and it permeated through just how we interacted, how we presented ourselves to market, and how we deliver our solutions. So, and it's funny you bring that up. We actually had a conversation immediately yesterday, and so a lot of our business goes directly to corporate clients. We also have business with carriers, such, and even at a carrier level where they have a lot of program business, where you think they would be more hands off in the day-to-day experience of an individual policyholder, they said it is even more critical now, DEI, to us than it's ever been, and it is lacking in the space for both brokers and for third-party administrators and how they
Mm,
bring solutions to the table. So the fact that we're presenting that as an opening and not just a slide that you just kind of pass over and move on is an important aspect of what we do, was an element of the conversation. There was actually with a large employer group in your area in Atlanta, where we had an hour meeting, and they took a half hour of the meeting to talk about DEI, which was great. We were prepared for it, but it just showed their prioritization for them. So totally agree with you.
You've been listening to Beyond the Claim, a podcast for risk and claims leaders. To ensure you never miss an episode, please subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you use Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to give us a quick rating for the show. Just tap the number of stars that you think the podcast deserves. Until next time, stay curious and keep innovating.